Members of Parliament, good morning. Good morning to the support staff, visitors in the public tribune, radio listeners, TV viewers, those viewing via social media, members of the media, all persons tuned in to this public meeting of Parliament. I welcome you to the meeting. This is public meeting number 21 for today, Thursday, September the 5th. At this time, I want to give a special word of welcome to the Acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Mr. Lyndon Lewis, and his support staff. We have established a quorum of 10 members. I invite you to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. The quorum that we have is actually 11 members. So again, welcome to all. As you are aware, this meeting was scheduled for 10 a.m. this morning. It was scheduled for initially 10 a.m. this morning. We awaited the necessary 30 minutes in order to determine whether we had a quorum or not. At the time, we did not have, but we did receive for the meeting notice of absence from MP Ludmila de Wever. We also received, as I mentioned during the gathering, notices of lateness from the MPs Marlin, Irian, and Duran, and we had also received a notice of absence from MP Kotai. So that's just for completeness sake of the notices given for the previous meeting. I see MP Brook looking at his. We also had received a notice from MP Brook, who initially could not be present, but is here for this meeting now. So welcome to one and all, and thank you for your notifications and for working on making it possible to be here and have this meeting actually started, because we were not able to have a meeting as such earlier. So at this point in time, I look to the members of Parliament and ask if there are any notifications by members of Parliament. I see MP Jacobs would like to take the floor, and I invite you to take the floor for your notifications, MP Jacobs.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning to you, the griffier, my colleagues here in Parliament, the Honourable Minister and his support staff, as well as all those in the tribune. Madam Chair, today being September 5th, I would like to take this time to give remembrance to the ordeal of 29 years ago of Hurricane Luis. Tomorrow, of course, being Hurricane Irma, which was only 7 years ago, and we are still recovering. And of course, persons may have lost their entire life or living during any of these storms, but St. Martin has and continues to be the resilient folks that we are, and use the storms of life to build back better, as we would say, build back stronger, and take the lessons learned to grow, and in fact share with our neighbors within the Caribbean region. I would like to also, within the month of September, we talk about mental health awareness. We also talk about suicide prevention. And so bringing awareness to these very important topics is, for me, very high on the list, and that we use this platform here in Parliament to ensure that awareness continues to grow. You always have a listening ear somewhere within your community, and to never give up. With that being said, I wish everyone a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Jacobs. I see no further notifications from the members of Parliament, so we continue with the meeting for today. Public meeting number 21, and the agenda points for this meeting are as follows. 1, incoming documents. 2, Ontwerplandsverordening, houdende regels inzake het hoger onderwijs en onderzoek, so-called Landsverordening hoger onderwijs. It is the incoming document here at Parliament number 431 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023, and it's dated the 8th of February 2023. It is National Ordinance, Draft National Ordinance number 165 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023. So this is the draft national ordinance laying down rules on higher education and research, higher education ordinance, and the number that it is registered under as incoming to Parliament is 431 of the parliamentary year 2022-2023. Going over to agenda point number 1, we have the incoming documents. And as customary, all members have received a list of incoming documents and the proposals how these are to be handled. These are incoming documents from IS 835 through 996 of the parliamentary year 2023-2024. Are there, members of Parliament, any comments or proposals on the list as presented? We don't have anyone indicating that. We would have seen that from the speakers list, but that is not the case. So the list and the proposals for handling is hereby approved. Going over to agenda point number 2, which is the draft national ordinance laying down rules on higher education and research. This draft national ordinance was received by the Parliament on February the 8th of 2023, and members, of course, have a copy of the draft national ordinance, and it also can be found on Parliament General Teams. We had a central committee, as is necessary for the handling of draft national ordinances, on August the 14th and October the 26th of 2023 on this subject matter. Members of Parliament posed their questions and the Minister answered these questions. As is also required, a report has been made on the deliberations in the Central Committee and was sent to the government. The government, as per requirement, answered this report with a so-called note following the final report. This document, members of Parliament, is registered on the IS 265 of the parliamentary year 2023-2024, and it is dated December the 8th of last year. Of course, all members have access to the draft national ordinance and the note following the final report. So, having given that brief introduction to the topic at hand, before giving the Minister the floor, I also want to add that the Parliament also met with the University of St. Martin to discuss their views on the draft national ordinance. The University of St. Martin submitted these comments, which were shared by Parliament with the Ministry on July 17th. So the report presented to Parliament by the University of St. Martin regarding the sentiments and views on this draft national ordinance were sent to the Ministry on the 17th of July of this year. So having also added that part in, I now would give the floor to the Honorable Acting Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sports, Mr. Lyndon Lewis, for his introductory remarks and presentation. Minister Lewis, you have the floor.
Good morning, honorable members of Parliament, honorable chair, listening and viewing audience. Good morning, St. Martin. Today, as I present the draft national ordinance on higher education, we stand on the brink of a transformative moment for St. Martin. This is not just a legal framework, it is the foundation for the future of the island's educational landscape. The draft national ordinance on higher education that is before us represents an opportunity to empower our citizens, strengthen our workforce, and drive the progress of St. Martin. During today's presentation, I will walk you through the history of higher education in St. Martin, the basic principles of the draft ordinance on higher education, the outcome of consultations with the relevant stakeholders, and an overview of the legal provisions within the draft national ordinance. On May 24, 2017, the Council of Ministers approved the Start Notitie related to the National Ordinance for Higher Education. In an effort to shape the higher education policy, the ministry engaged in discussions with various stakeholders. These discussions highlighted that there are multiple solutions that could be suitable for St. Martin. The complexity of higher education means there's no single right way to address it. However, all stakeholders identify several core challenges for higher education related to St. Martin's social, economic, and educational systems. The small scale of St. Martin was noted as the biggest challenge. Other challenges include the complexity of the subject in relation to global trends, the quality of education, and the global economic situation. Despite these challenges, all stakeholders share a common goal: to strengthen higher education and create more opportunities for the people of St. Martin to achieve higher education without leaving the island. Based on this, the Council of Ministers made the following policy decisions of higher education. Number one, to align the economic growth agenda and labor market needs directly within the educational agenda for higher education. Acknowledge the realities of our ambitions considering the island scale, the limited availability of the tertiary education at USM, and the financial constraints with the aim to grow steadily. Attract more foreign students to ensure financial sustainability and higher education programs. Invest in covering the core cost of higher education based on the maximum percentage to keep tuition fees relatively low and avoid shifting the financial burden to the study finance system. Organize quality assurance through specialized agencies should have the opportunity to pursue further education. St. Martin faces challenges due to its small scale, limited resources, and the complexity of its education system. The coexistence of several international education systems makes progression and connection to further education difficult. The limited higher education options on the island hinder students who wish to continue their studies locally after secondary and secondary vocational education. More coherence is needed in the education system to ensure smooth progression, which higher education regulations can provide. The government intends for these legislations to support the effective delivery of higher education to align with current economic and social developments, and that it is flexible enough to adapt to future changes. Additionally, the legislation aims to coordinate the administrative relations between the country and educational institutions by establishing rules on their legal status and governance structure. The draft ordinance includes statutory regulations for how higher education must be organized by institutions, setting minimum requirements for quality and education, quality of the education they provide. It also outlines the legal position, tasks, responsibilities, and funding of higher education organizations in St. Martin, regulating access to quality of higher education and legal status for students. Finally, the government must ensure the quality of diplomas issued so students can effectively enter the labor market. Students and employers need to trust the value of diplomas, which should have civil effect. Accreditation of programs ensures institutions maintain sufficient quality levels and meet predetermined requirements, giving diplomas real value on the local, regional, and international labor markets for education. Currently, higher education in St. Martin operates based on agreements, contracts, or memoranda of understanding with individuals, institutions, and programs. This results in insufficient control over higher education policy and its coherence with other education policies. There is no synergy, and a lack of legislation means that access to higher education, its quality, and efficient funding are not guaranteed. With this draft ordinance, the government aims to strengthen the education system, improve access by creating more opportunities for students, and counter brain drain. Every student, regardless of financial means, to maximize international quality standards, saving manpower, and allowing the investment in building local capacity. These policy decisions help to strengthen our higher education system and provide more opportunities for the people of St. Martin. The government recognizes that the small scale and complexity of our current education system pose various challenges. Higher education in St. Martin has not yet reached its full potential, and setting overly ambitious goals can be counterproductive. Therefore, government has prioritized the creation of regulations for higher education. Based on the social and economic context and international and regional trends, the government has determined by key guiding principles, including flexibility and minimum quality standards for national and international recognition of higher education. With these principles in mind, government is committed to make higher education accessible, high quality, and efficient. The draft ordinance is based on the following basic principles. 1, strengthening links with the labor market needs. St. Martin is currently not fully utilizing its labor potential. There is a direct correlation between the level of education and success in the labor market. To address this, the government can establish rules to improve access to higher education by enhancing the transition from secondary to tertiary education and fostering cooperation between these levels. We can reduce dropout rates and ensure more of our population attains higher education to align with the labor market's demands. Understanding the medium-term needs of the labor market is crucial for determining the training programs offered. These programs must address the economic and social needs of St. Martin. Institutions seeking funding must align their training offerings with these labor markets' needs. Ultimately, retaining talent within St. Martin requires the students graduate with relevant skills and qualifications to meet the local demands. 2, no distinction between institutions of higher professional education and universities. In our current education system, progressing to higher levels is challenging for some students. Most secondary students are in preparatory secondary vocational education. To address this, we can expand both secondary and high school. Most students are preparatory secondary vocational education. To address this, we can expand both secondary and higher vocational education by ensuring smooth progression pathways. Given St. Martin's small scale, higher education institutions need flexibility in how they design and organize their programs. Therefore, the government has decided not to differentiate between higher professional education and university education. Institutions can choose whether to have their bachelor's or master's programs accredited at a higher vocational or scientific level. This approach allows institutions to offer both types of education, maximizing intake from secondary and vocational education and easing the transition to higher education. 3, Anglo-Saxon and European education systems in higher education. To ensure a smooth flow in higher education, the government supports institutions that offer programs based on both the Anglo-Saxon and European systems. The Anglo-Saxon system, used in the United States and the United Kingdom, and the European systems prevalent in countries like the Netherlands, provide flexible pathways for students transitioning from secondary or vocational schools. Institutions can choose which system to use for their programs. For government-funded courses, it is essential to consider social needs and labor market demands. Instruction is generally provided in English or Dutch, but the draft national ordinance allows for other languages if they are relevant to the program. Using both the Anglo-Saxon and the European system also promotes international cooperation with institutions and countries that follow these models. 4, room for variation by maintaining the dual system. The government is committed to allowing the variety in higher education system, including the possibility of attracting or retaining private institutions. According to Article 11 of the Constitution of St. Martin, we maintain a dual system of higher education. Higher education in St. Martin comprises 3 types of institutions: private institutions, which are often profit-oriented and not funded by government; government-funded institutions, which may or may not be profit-oriented; and public institutions maintained by government through public law entities. This approach encourages economic diversification by being open to commercial institutions. If institutions do not receive government funding, they face fewer regulations. The minimum requirements for private institutions would then include the organization of and access to education, granting diplomas, ensuring accreditation, along with the registration and information obligations. Government-funded institutions, on the other hand, must meet stricter requirements, especially regarding admission and education quality. If no institutions are funded and there is a significant social need for higher education, the government can step in to provide public higher education. However, given the capacity of the existing institution, this scenario is unlikely, but ensures that government can still provide higher education in extreme cases. Five, only accredited programs will be recognized. It is crucial that the national ordinance clarifies the meaning of higher education diplomas for all stakeholders: students, employers, and education institutions. The higher education diploma's social value should extend to local, regional, and international labor markets, as well as provide opportunities for further education. For instance, a recognized master's degree in law should grant access to the legal profession, highlighting the significance of government-recognized programs. Under the national ordinance, only institutions with recognized study programs will be authorized to confer diplomas, titles, and degrees. This requirement will apply universally, including both government-funded and private institutions. Institutions will need to seek program recognition, which will involve accreditation by the designated body. Accreditation will serve as a vital assurance for quality education. Recognized programs will be listed in a centralized higher education register, facilitating verification during application processes. This register will also detail diplomas and degrees. An institution is authorized to grant, ensuring transparency and authenticity in qualifications that are awarded. Ensuring institutions do not grant diplomas without recognized accreditation is crucial to safeguard against sustained substandard education offering at a high cost. Any institution in St. Martin issuing diplomas, titles, or degrees without proper recognition and accreditation will be in violation of the law and will be subject to fines, underscoring the importance of regulatory adherence and quality assurance in higher education. 6, internationalization partnership with minimum requirements. The government supports international cooperations, especially considering St. Martin's scale. The draft national ordinance enables such collaborations, allowing for joint programs where students can earn degrees from both a foreign institution and a St. Martin institution. In cases of joint study programs or specializations, legal protections are essential for students. The draft ordinance includes safeguards to ensure these cooperative agreements protect students' rights while participating in joint programs with foreign institutions. The St. Martin institution will remain accountable for ensuring compliance with the draft national ordinance. This includes entering into detailed cooperation agreements with foreign partners, specifying educational content, degree conferral methods, student registration processes, program cost, and tuition fee responsibilities. Throughout joint programs, students' rights and obligations will be upheld, ensuring transparency and accountability in their educational journey. 7, flexibility in funding. Room for other financial partners. The draft national ordinance introduces funding guidelines aimed at sharing the cost burden of higher education between the government and institutions. Higher education is seen as a public asset, necessitating government financial support to guarantee accessibility and quality, while striving to provide equitable opportunities for more St. Martin students and mitigate brain drain. The government recognizes its financial limitations, both presently and in the future. To ensure sustainability, the draft ordinance grants higher education providers flexibility in financing beyond government subsidies, contingent upon sound financial management. Institutions are empowered to invest, secure loans, and engage in commercial activities under the oversight of their boards. This includes offering specific products or services commercially, leveraging their organizational structure for economic purposes. Additionally, performance contracts can be established with government-funded institutions, linking funding to outcomes such as student success, rates, and institutional efficiency. This innovative approach allows for diversified investment in higher education, adapting to future needs. Moreover, the draft ordinance supports triangular cooperation between institutions, the business sector, and the government. This collaboration is beneficial for research initiatives that serve public and business interests requiring joint funding. It encourages higher education institutions to act as knowledge partners in research collaborations, fostering innovation, and addressing social challenges beyond market capabilities. Furthermore, institutions are able to set higher tuition fees, particularly for international students, to ensure financial sustainability. This framework aims to foster a dynamic higher education sector that balances public responsibilities with financial autonomy, ensuring long-term viability and societal impact. 8, room for technological developments and innovation. The government acknowledges the critical role of innovation and technological advancements in society. Higher education serves as a key avenue for fostering creativity and innovation among students. Graduates are equipped to enhance their innovative capacity within professional fields and address significant societal challenges. The draft national ordinance includes provisions for experimentation, allowing institutions to pilot innovative policies aimed at enhancing educational quality. These experiments provide flexibility to swiftly adapt to evolving social demands and improve teaching effectiveness. This proactive approach supports continuous improvement in higher education to meet current and future societal needs. 9, quality assurance, general duty of care of the institutions. The higher education institution bears responsibility for maintaining educational quality, as outlined in the draft national ordinance, which establishes a general duty care. The government believes these institutions, as professional bodies, are best equipped to define and uphold quality standards in accordance with national and international norms. Rather than prescribing detailed standards, the ordinance outlines a broad duty of care, allowing the institution's board to interpret and enforce these standards' responsibility. In government-funded institutions, the executive board assumes accountability to the supervisory board. Minimum requirements for the board of these institutions ensure governance and internal oversight are separate, adhering to the principles of the Corporate Governance Code and the two-tier supervisory board model. These model legally separates management responsibilities vested in the executive board for the oversight duties entrusted to the supervisory board, each defined by specific statutory roles within the draft ordinance. 10, strong positioning of students. In higher education, the students is at the heart of the educational experience. Institutions not only deliver high-quality education, but also play a crucial role in shaping and nurturing the formation and growth of students. The draft national ordinance emphasizes that institutions must actively foster personal development and a sense of responsibility among students. This preparation is essential for students to effectively engage in St. Martin's society, the wider Caribbean region, and globally. Moreover, institutions are mandated to promote knowledge, dissemination of societal benefit, and encourage lifelong learning. Education serves as the cornerstone of students' students' future and career. Transparent information about program content and quality assist students in selecting programs aligned with their abilities, learning preferences, and career aspirations. Clear delineation of rights and responsibilities ensures students understand what is expected of them and what they are entitled to. Establishing these expectations enhances the likelihood of students successfully completing their studies. Giving institutions autonomy in structuring education and setting admission criteria, it is imperative to safeguard students' legal rights. The draft ordinance therefore mandates that institutions establish comprehensive education and examination regulations for all programs. These regulations must outline program structures, procedural guidelines, and students' rights and responsibilities concerning their education and exams. Additionally, institutions are required to establish examination boards and appoint appeal boards to ensure fair and transparent assessment processes. Clarity regarding rights and responsibilities strengthens the relationship between institutions and students, fostering commitment and mutual engagement. Students, in turn, play an important role in enhancing institutional quality and participating in academic discourse and providing feedback on educational experiences. Participation in advisory bodies is crucial in this regard, facilitating student involving in shaping educational development. This engagement enriches students' educational journey beyond the curriculum, empowering them to influence educational advancements within their institutions. The development of this draft national ordinance has benefited from consultations with the University of St. Martin and the American University of the Caribbean. Their input focused on several key areas, such as recognizing their current roles in advancing knowledge on St. Martin, fostering partnerships with diverse collaborators, advocating for accreditation, diversity, enhancing institutional governance, and securing adequate program financing. In 2018, consultations were held. Written queries were received, and responses were provided to the USM and AUC regarding the draft national ordinance. USM's feedback focused on the specific provisions concerning government-funded institutions like USM. Concerns such as the potential establishment of a public higher education institution, sufficient funding assurance, the future need for institutional as well as program accreditation, flexibility in forming partnerships across sectors, adherence to rigorous quality standards, and the authority of the supervisory board were posed. These issues were thoroughly discussed and resolved. Similarly, AUC's queries focus on issues including the applicability of provisions to non-subsidized institutions like AUC. Specific programs include such as the Doctor of Medicine program, prerequisites for higher education programs, and accessibility considerations for students without prior education on St. Martin. Responses to AUC queries were provided in writing. More recently, in August 2023, a query from AUC was received regarding Doctor of Medicine programs. MD programs are regulated in several articles of the draft ordinance, and all provisions therein that regulate master programs apply to MD programs. The draft ordinance regulates that access to a master program requires a bachelor degree from either the Anglo-Saxon or European system. This access to an MD program also requires a bachelor degree from either the Anglo-Saxon or European system. Additionally, in August of 2023, USM had an opportunity to present their considerations regarding the draft national ordinance to the Committee of Education, Culture, Youth, and Sports Affairs of Parliament. The feedback was duly noted and used to update the draft where necessary. It's important to note that no consultation meetings were conducted with the National Institute for Professional Advancement, NIPA, as it operates within the framework of the National Ordinance of Secondary Vocational Education and Training, offering courses equivalent to International Standard Classification of Education Level 3 and 4, distinct for higher education, which encompasses International Standard Classification of Education Levels 5 to 8. The remaining slides of this presentation are dedicated to providing insight into the legal provisions that are regulated in specific chapters within the draft ordinance for higher education, which range from chapters 1 through 11. Chapter 1 of the draft national ordinance provides definitions and specifies which chapters apply to public, government-funded, and non-funded institutions. It outlines the core task of higher education institutions, emphasizing the transfer of knowledge for societal benefit. According to the draft, institutions wishing to offer higher education in St. Martin must register, allowing for an understanding of its content and structure. The design also supports the financial sustainability of institutions by permitting investments, loans, and financial commitments. The institution board is responsible for managing financial resources to ensure proper operation and continuity, allowing the development of commercial activities such as offering products and/or services. Chapter 2 covers general provisions for higher education. It allows institutions to offer programs based on both the Anglo-Saxon and European systems, which can coexist within a single institution. Institutions may also offer programs outside these systems if they clearly benefit St. Martin's society. This chapter also details language options for instruction, required teaching staff competencies, and central register of recognized programs, program types, and credits. Entry requirements including recognition of foreign diplomas, examination conditions including the establishment of a board or examiners, and the awarding of the degrees and titles. This chapter outlines essential accreditation and quality requirements, emphasizing the institution's responsibility for maintaining the quality of higher education. It details the designation of an accredited body through national decree and ministerial regulation, the validity and accreditation, and the recovery process following the accreditation expiration or lost. Chapter 4 covers the management and organization of public and government-funded institutions. It details the board of directors, including membership qualification and the role of president or rector magnificus. Article 47 through 77. Articles 74 through 77 specify the Board of Directors' accountability to the Supervisory Board, Board of Trustees, and outline the procedures for appointment, dismissal, membership compatibility, and regulations by the Supervisory Board. This chapter also defines the qualifications, responsibilities, tasks, powers, and accountability to the Ministry of the Supervisory Board. It addresses the organization and management of education, including regulation for the Dean of the Academic Affairs, department heads, managers of education, academic boards, and the participation of faculty, students, and staff in education management, including a complaint committee. Article 90 outlines the personnel policy and legal position of staff, allowing institutions to determine these aspects. Finally, this chapter includes provisions for students' rights and registration. Chapter 5, regarding funding. This chapter also deals with the management and organization of public and government-funded special institutions, including the funding for higher education programs through subsidies, examinations executed by the Educational Inspectorate, the method of calculation of government contributions under the auspices of the ministry, the conditions attached to public funding, the 4-year strategic plan, the institutional budget, the annual report, the annual financial report, financial auditing, the withdrawal of funding, amendments and payment settlements, and consultation with boards, faculty, staff, and students. Chapter 6, Supervision. The topic of supervision is handled in Chapter 6 of the draft ordinance, which provides for ministerial powers regarding the supervision of the institution, legal compliance, institutional and programmatic developments, the Education Inspectorate, and obligations to provide information. It also stipulates the responsibilities to the Minister of the Supervisory Board and the measures in place in case of failure to approve a budget. Chapter 7, Special Provisions for Public Institutions of Higher Education. Special provisions for public institutions of higher education are handled in Chapter 7, which provides for ministerial powers to establish a public institution of higher education, structural formation, and institutional boards, and its composition, and other bodies of consultation, as well as the establishment and dismissal of members of the Supervisory Board, the approval of the budget and protocol, the measures to be taken in case of failure to approve a budget. Chapter 8, Special Provisions for Public and Subsidized Institutions. Chapter 8 provides special provisions for public and subsidized institutions, such as protocol of academic offerings, needs assessments, and sufficiently and continuation of providing academic programs in accordance with national needs. This chapter also includes the stipulations related to ministerial advice on Education Inspectorate, the lapsing of ministerial consent, ministerial powers over an academic program, rules on cooperation between St. Martin and foreign institutions, the scope for innovation and pilot programs, and the levying of fees and tuition, protocol, and ministerial withdrawal of consent. Chapter 9 through 11 include special provisions for private institutions, penal provisions, and transitional and final provisions. This has been my presentation on the draft National Ordinance on Higher Education. Thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Minister Lewis, for your presentation on the draft law on higher education before us this morning. Members of Parliament, with the presentation by the Minister of the draft law as submitted by the government of St. Martin back in 2023, the opportunity is now given to members of Parliament to comment and ask questions. This will take place in accordance with the speakers list here at the desk. And as a reminder, the speaking time is 20 minutes in the first round and 10 minutes in the second round, as we are now handling this draft in a public meeting of Parliament. According to the speakers list, I now give the floor to MP Jacobs. MP Jacobs, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning once again to you and all tuned in. Thank you to the Minister of Education, Culture, Youth and Sport for the presentation, and of course the Department of Education who spearheaded this piece of legislation. I would like to remark that the importance of such a legislation for St. Martin's continued development of our human resources is very, very much highly regarded by my person as well as many others who have been, I believe, on the ground while this was being done. It ensures the viability of our local university, the University of St. Martin, as well enables the growth of that university, the establishment and regulation of even more educational institutions, as our goal of having edutourism as a means of generation of income for St. Martin is also on the table. This legislation also will make opportunities possible for our St. Martin citizens to continue to have access to quality tertiary education. As such, I am very, very proud to have played, even though a small but significant role in the process leading to this legislation getting here to the floor of Parliament in a public meeting today. This shows, especially since being there in 2015 to 17, in the Ministry of ECYS when it all started. This shows the length of time that this legislation has been in process. A great thank you, of course, to the Education Department and all the stakeholders who participated in the process and who will undoubtedly continue to peruse and ensure that any upgrades that are necessary are met as we continue to face the changing needs of education and our communities. One thing is for sure, that constant change is what we're dealing with in education and in life in general, and that change and growth is necessary, and therefore amendments towards future growth is always welcomed. Though we are tiny as a nation, our human resources, our St. Martin born and or raised citizens have made an impact all over the world with their basic, secondary, and of late tertiary education offered right here on St. Martin. It shows what we can do, but also potential for the future. The goal is to ensure that each one of us has the opportunity, in fact, that we seek to increase the successes of more students, more St. Martiners of any age every single year, in keeping with Sustainable Development Goal number 4, quality education for all. As such, I've taken note, Madam Chair, that you've also mentioned that a meeting was held with the University of St. Martin and this Parliament earlier this year. While I was not personally present during said meeting, I have heard the concerns and the questions of the University of St. Martin as direct institute being impacted by this law, I would like to ask just a few questions because I know a lot of work has gone into the legislation. I would like to ask the minister and the ministry a few questions through you, Madam Chair, which are as follows. Have the questions and or concerns which were brought forward by the University of St. Martin been taken into consideration and or addressed in this presentation, and if not, in the draft legislation that is before us today? A second question would be then, has a note of aanwijziging, so this is something coming from government, been presented along with this draft or will be presented during the course of the handling of this legislation as a result of the concerns and or questions brought forth by the university? Or will such a draft amendment be necessary, whether coming from the government or from Parliament side? The third question I have is how does, if no amendments are necessary, how does the ministry aim to address the concerns and or questions that have been brought forward by the University of St. Martin? And lastly, Madam Chair, what are the risks associated in not having a higher education legislation in place as soon as possible? I know it has been something that has been keenly requested, especially through USM over the years, and many, including those in the room, have done a lot of diligent work to get it where it is. Of course, we want the best legislation moving forward, and any further delays, what impact will that have on higher education on St. Martin on the whole? Madam Chair, I mentioned that was my last question, but though this question is not related to tertiary education, the preparation for students to get to that point, I believe, is one that our education department with all its stakeholders need to address as soon as possible. And so I look forward to us dialoguing. It's not so much a question, but I am challenging the education department. I've recently been in presentations at USM by scholars who are working towards their doctorate, who have done it based on our education system. And I'm talking mainly about secondary education. And I feel that it has to be fit for purpose. We cannot continue to, I heard the minister mention that a majority of our students are not even in the academic levels that would be precursors for university level. And so for me, it is a goal that on St. Martin, we offer those students also the opportunity. We have compulsory education until 18, and therefore we must address the secondary system to ensure that more of our students have the opportunity to go on to tertiary education, should that be their dream. That is all for now, Madam Chair, and I await any further opportunity to be able to address the concerns, as has been mentioned by USM in previous presentations right here in Parliament. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Silveria Jacobs. The next speaker on the list is MP Duran. MP Duran, I invite you to take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Honorable Minister, his support staff, my honorable colleagues, and a special good afternoon to the people of St. Martin. Education is the most powerful tool that we can use to change the world. Nelson Mandela. I firmly believe in this, Madam Chair, and I want to touch on the fact that this presentation was very important. I would also like to thank the staff of the ministry through the years that brought us to this point, because I know that there's been a lot of discussion over some years. We are finally here, and we can finally see the forward movement of this legislation. I know that nothing can be done perfect, because nothing is waterdicht. St. Martin and the world is developing, so therefore, where we see we need to amend and improve, we need to do that. Through you, Madam Chair, the following. With respect to the alignment of the economic growth, you mentioned, Minister, talking about aligning higher education with the needs of the labor market and economic growth. So my question will be, how will the ministry ensure that the educational programs keep up with the changing needs of the job market, and will be ensure that ongoing consultation remains between, of course, the Ministry of Education and the labor market, so to speak. My second question, through you, Madam Chair, with respect to attracting international students. I know that it was mentioned in terms of financial sustainability. That was a great idea. But we face tough competition from larger countries with well-established universities. So my question is the following. What concrete steps have we taken or will we take to ensure that our institutions are attractive in order to pull in that foreign students, so to speak, in order to come to our establishments? My next point, with respect to quality assurance in education, it's vital, I understand. And the ordinance mentioned that specialized agencies will handle this. However, how will these agencies function is not entirely clear. So my question is, through you, Madam Chair, can you explain how these agencies will be chosen and what specified standards will they use in order to upkeep and meet the international benchmarks? My next question, with respect to accreditation, it is important indeed to make sure that our degrees hold value. But for some smaller, newer institutions, meeting these accreditation requirements can be tough. So what specific support will the ministry offer to these institutions to help them meet the minimum requirements in terms of the accreditation for the degrees? The next point that was mentioned in one of the slides was the funding conditions. Government will put conditions into the funding, which I know is understandable, it's needed, of course, especially when dealing with the people's money. My question is, what specific conditions will the government tie into the funding, and how will the government ensure that these conditions are met without basically stifling the institutions? Have these discussions already taken place? I would like to know in terms of the lead up to this legislation. With respect to private institutions, we know that private institutions form part of our educational system, and they face their own challenges as well, which is different than the public institutions might face. How does this ordinance address the unique needs of private institutions, and what kind of support or oversight will they receive to ensure the high standards? With respect to partnerships with foreign institutions, I know that that is already taking place in certain areas with respect to our educational system. I would like to know what minimum standards will we set for these partners, and how will they benefit St. Martin's educational system in a practical way? Lastly, when it comes to the transitional provisions and how this transition will take place, once this ordinance is passed in the House of Parliament, I have the following question. What measures will be taken to make sure that there is a smooth transition, and how will you support the institutions and students in terms of adjusting to the new rules? Madam Chair, through you, these were my questions to the Minister. And once again, I would like to thank each and every stakeholder that had any involvement in this. I know that education is the tool that will shape our future. We need a lot of love and support in that area, and I believe that this is definitely a step in the right direction. I thank you for the opportunity, and I look forward to the responses.
Thank you, MP Duran, and we continue with the members of Parliament wishing to speak on the topic, and I invite MP Melissa Gums to take the floor. MP Gums.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and good afternoon to you, the Griffier, my colleagues, those joining us in the Tribune, online via radio, and special good afternoon, of course, to the Honorable Acting Minister and his support staff. I'd like to thank the Minister, through you, Madam Chair, for the presentation, and say that I'm glad that we're finally here for the public handling of this law. I myself, having attended USM for just a year before transferring to my alma mater, St. Thomas University, only because USM was not officially recognized, it was not officially accredited, so I felt for my best chance at professional and personal development, I had to leave St. Martin, as so many of my student colleagues at the time did. In preparing for this public meeting, Minister, and noting what the Chair Lady mentioned in her own opening remarks regarding the report that Parliament sent of the meeting with USM to government, I just have a few questions to start this round, and I'll await the responses as we move to the second. Through you, Madam Chair Lady, the Minister mentioned, as was stated, that USM's concerns and considerations were taken up where necessary in the law. And MP Jacobs also asked, was this actually done? I would go a bit further, if possible, that the ministry could provide specific instances where USM suggestions were actually incorporated into the law, because there were several concrete issues raised that would impact USM's ability to remain sustainable and innovative, even with the added benefit of this ordinance. So I'm sure the concern is that the more critical of these issues are taken up just for the public's edification. And did the ministry examine and assess other versions of this national ordinance in other countries within the kingdom to see how that's handled from, for example, University of Curacao and Aruba, just to see how that is managed, especially since we have the unique appearance then of this being a private / also state kind of funded entity. Having gone to school in the US, there's very large differences between what a private university is able to do and a state-backed university is able to do. And finally, for now, did the ministry receive notice from USM on the setup of the St. Martin Science Research Institute, the SSRI, and has that consideration been taken up in the preparation of this draft national ordinance and also in consideration to funding? Because that is really where I think the rise and fall and the continuance of USM is going to rest on what money is available. And I've heard a lot about attracting foreign students, etc. That also comes with its own challenges from a justice perspective in terms of visas and such, as I've mentioned in the Central Committee, and also from a housing perspective, because foreign students will need places to live. And I think before we start to focus on that, it needs to be on how can we keep it sustainable financially here for the local market. And that's it from me right now, Madam Chair, and I'll await the answers. Thank you.
Thank you, MP Combs. And the next speaker who I invite to take the floor is MP Shamira Rosberg. MP Rosberg, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Secretary General, Minister, and support staff, my dear colleagues, the public viewing here present today and the ones online. Thank you for this important presentation. As my colleagues already stated, this is a step in the right direction. After reviewing the draft, I have a few questions for you, Madam Chair. The first question is, to what extent does the current ordinance recognize the difference between higher education, so professional education, HBO, and WEO? Because based on the explanatory memorandum, it mentions that higher education can be both vocational and scientific, but the difference is not clearly specified in the ordinance. Also, I would like to know through you, Madam Chair, the difference in curriculum as well for the HBO and WEO, because based on what I have reviewed, it doesn't seem to be clear in the memorandum how this difference is made. So if that can be clarified, how this will translate in the curriculum. Also, what measures are being taken to facilitate the transition of students from HBO to WEO? What are the specific agreements on the recognition of the earned credits between those two forms of education? Reason why I'm asking that is in the memorandum, the different levels, there's a lack of clarity between the HBO and WEO and the recognition of the qualifications. So if that can be clarified through you, Madam Chair, to the Ministry. Also the recognition and value of the diplomas. In the memorandum and in the draft ordinance, I have read civic effect of a HBO diploma versus a WEO diploma, and how that is
decided on the labor market and the further educations, what measures are taken to clearly define the difference? Because in the whole document, I'm seeing that civic effect is mentioned, but it's unclear how this applies in the difference between HBO and WO diplomas. What different accreditation criteria apply to the HBO and WO programs, and how is the quality of both programs, forms of education guaranteed? Again, by reviewing the memorandum, the accreditation is mentioned as an important instrument, but it doesn't clarify and differentiate the accreditation requirements for the two different levels of education. For example, how it's done within the kingdom. I also saw in the memorandum that there's a difference made, for example, between 180 versus 240 credit distinction. It appears that the bachelor programs may vary from study loads 180 versus 240. But my question to you, Madam Chair, is can the ministry confirm whether the difference is intended to make a difference between the HBO versus WO programs? And how is this difference guaranteed in practice? Again, relating to the memorandum, is a difference in study load, or is it also in relationship to the level? That seems a little bit unclear. Other question to you, Madam Chair. How does the funding of individual programs relate to the overall financing of an educational institution? For instance, is the number of accredited programs considered in calculating the integral funding? Because again, in the memorandum, it indicates that the number of accredited programs and enrolled students influences funding calculations, but no specific relation is made between the base funding of an institution and program-based funding. What are the criteria for recognizing foreign accreditation bodies by the minister, through you, of ministry, through you, Madam Chair, and how is it ensured that these credit bodies meet St. Martin's quality standards? Because based on the memorandum, it seems that the accreditation is handled by foreign bodies, but specific criteria for recognizing these bodies by the ministry are not fully detailed in the memorandum. Then also a question is, could it be clarified by the ministry to you, Madam Chair, what is meant by the civic effect of a diploma in relation to its value in the labor, on the labor market and further education? In the draft agreement, the term civic effect is used in various places in the memorandum, but it's a bit confusing. It is mentioned both in legal context and in relation to a broader value of diploma, so if that can be clarified. And the last question for now, through you, Madam Chair, is how is cooperation with foreign educational institutes promoted, and what incentives are provided for joint decrees or exchange programs? Again, relating to the memorandum, it mentions cooperation with foreign institutes, but provides a few details about the incentives for supporting international programs. That's it for now, and I also agree with the sentiment from my colleagues. Education is key, and this is for sure a step forward. I thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Rosberg, and I now invite MP Iran to take the floor.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, to you, the Khafir, my colleague members, the Minister and his support staff, and to those of you by the USM entity. Madam Chair, I also would like to state that, yes, education is important to build any nation, I believe, starts with education. When we look at countries that have developed over the last few years that came from, let's say, almost from poverty to now one of the most successful countries in the world, a few of them, it started with them investing in education almost 40 years ago to see the benefits today. So yes, I think today we are seeing a good step forward, and I know that the staff, the of the Ministry of Education have been working on this for a very long time, and I'm happy that we are this close today. I do have some questions, Madam Chair, based on the presentation, but also some other questions a little off of the presentation, but I'll start with the questions for the Minister. How will the government ensure true independence of the Supervisory Board of Trustees, given the Minister has the powers to establish and dismiss its members? What specific measures are in place to prevent political interference in the day-to-day operations of the higher education institution? How will the government balance the need for the ministerial oversight with the institutional autonomy? I think this is important. We see this a lot, let's say, with government entities, but what we don't want to see this happening when it comes to education in terms of too much, let's say, political interference going forward. How will the success of this ordinance be measured? I believe in KPIs, and I would like to know in a few years from now, how will we measure the success of this ordinance? I believe we'll have, I believe in the data we have today, but if there's new data that comes forward that says, hey, we have to adapt based on this new information, we should be able to measure the success. What key performance indicators will be used to evaluate its effectiveness over time? What safeguards are in place to ensure the focus on financial sustainability does not compromise educational quality? So what safeguards are in place to ensure that the focus on the financial sustainability of the institution does not compromise educational quality? How will the 4-year strategic plan, I believe it's Article 97, be evaluated and adjusted if the economic or labor market conditions change rapidly? I'm a big believer in innovation, and technology doubles every 5 years, and I believe in today's time it's doubling even faster. So we have to take that into consideration, and we have to be able to see in this law how it adapts to that. What criteria will be used to designate an accredited body as mentioned in Article 69? How specifically will the economic growth agenda and labor market needs be aligned with the educational agenda for higher education? And what mechanisms will be in place to ensure this alignment remains flexible and responsive to economic conditions? Also, through you, Madam Chair, while we have the USM here, the Minister, and the Ministry, there are a few students that went to USM, I believe, under a program that was in collaboration with the institution from Curacao. Today, these students do not have access to transcripts, and it's like they can't. Their job is asking them for a transcript. They're going to USM. They've been told they can't. The USM doesn't have the information, which I think is tragic for them. They're being told to go to Curacao, and I believe it's very unfair to these students who went to school here, and now they're being left dangling about and being have to fend for themselves. So, through you, Madam Chair, I really would like that the Minister, the Ministry, and USM who's here today, please find a way to get some answers to these students as soon as possible. It's very unfair to them that they are not able to access their transcripts, and they are getting no help, basically, from the USM or from the Ministry. Madam Chair, we also have a few cases of persons, their diplomas are not being, let's say, valued locally, but are being valued everywhere else. So we have persons that have a bachelor's degree, for example, they want to have it evaluated for their work or for whatever reason, personal reason they may have. They've even paid international institutions in the US, top ones, international institutions in the UK and in the Netherlands. And I've even advised them that, okay, apply to a school in the Netherlands, right? Or even the UK. And if they're accepted there, then obviously the diploma is valued. So how can it be that the schools in the UK, the Netherlands, and even the US is accepting these diplomas, but we are here now saying that is not the case. So I would really like some answers to that also. And if this individual could potentially get even their money back for having to pay privately to have their diplomas evaluated. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, MP Irian. I now invite MP Cruz to take the floor. MP Cruz.
A blessed afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, SG, Honorable Minister of Education, and your support staff, my fellow colleagues, and those in the Tribune. I first want to thank the ministry for doing a great job pushing to make sure that we are here today discussing a very important matter for the country. I only want to make a couple statements because I think it is important that whilst we seek to grow, that we pay attention to what actually is going on today with what we already have. I think it is somewhat troubling when I would receive a request from a school, MLK, requesting a donation for something simple as ink and copybooks. I think it is important that while we are trying to make sure that our second goes to third, but we pay attention to the elementary level, because once they are weak on 5s and 6, it is almost impossible for those students to see themselves even growing or going to that other level. Another comment I'd like to make, and I heard another colleague of mine ask the question when it comes to involvement from government. But I do believe that, and it's maybe an idea, I'm going to throw it out there, that our government-owned companies should be able to give scholarships to our students. And it could start as early as a 3rd form or 4th form for the students that are interested in that field. Once that happens, they get a feel already for what the work field would feel like when they finish their studies. I heard the term brain drain, but when reading the answers from the previous minister, it made me think more on something else. The country is losing, and not because we don't have educated people here, but basically because they leave and don't come back. So one of the ideas would definitely be, like I mentioned before, companies giving scholarships to our students with a guarantee once they have passed to come back, a guarantee with a job. That would make a lot of sense to me. Madam Chair, another comment also would be the one to seek a way that we could start paying attention to our kids that are in need of special needs. Again, we are thinking, and I am all the way for the legislation that is here before us today, but I do want us to pay attention to where we are, okay? I was not part of Parliament, neither government, when this all started, but looking through the answers from the previous minister, I had a lot of questions, and I wanted to ask one question first, and that was if the minister, our sitting minister, saw these answers that were given before coming to this meeting today, and if he stands behind them. And I'm talking about the document that we received in Parliament on the 8th of December, 2023. There's one question there concerning any other university, and the answer was that no, there was only two. If the minister doesn't have it, I have a copy of all the documents from the other university here that requested and has not gotten a reply back since from the ministry. That would also be something handy to take into account. For some reason, a lot of things just get misplaced in government. I don't know if it's misplaced or... Then there was a question concerning the foreign students, since we are looking to bring students from away here, and it refers to using the same method that is used for the AOC. While I know that most of those students are American and they will just fall under the van rechtswege, so I would have liked to see that also somewhere, how it would be tackled for our Caribbean students that are already having difficulties coming here. And that is all from my part. Madam Chair Lady, thank you.
Thank you, MP La Cruz, and we continue. And I now invite MP Brook to take the floor. MP Brook.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady. To the Minister, to the members of the university, those listening via the different media, welcome, and thank you very much for tuning in. I just have a few brief questions and also comments. First of all, with my comments, I'd like to thank all those involved in making this draft legislation reach so far. I think it's something that is definitely needed for this country. It is long overdue, and of course, one of the things that I've always said that is very important for us as individuals, as politicians, to start investing in our people. And I think this is one way that we're doing it that will have my support as well moving forward. With the presentation, in the presentation I heard a lot of interesting facts, and I think one of the things that I understood is that we are going to be looking into educational tourism. With this said, my question is, have conversation already been taken up with, for example, the Ministry of Justice with regard to possibility of student visas? Is this also something that is already on the table or in discussions? In addition to that, it is also the other question we talk about. We are going to make sure that we cater to the local market. How exactly does the university intend to find out what the labor market needs? I need a little bit more detail in that. Why? Because we constantly say that we're catering to the labor market, but usually when individuals finish school, they come with a degree, or there's not enough space, they don't need this, they don't need that. So how are we going to ensure that when students finish the University of St. Martin, that they're able to fit in smooth transition into the labor market of St. Martin, for example? So that's something I want to know, how exactly in details, how the university intend to do this. Is it the intention also of the university to become more of a full-time? Because I know how it functions now is that most of the classes are in the evenings. So we have a lot of students that, they go to work, in the evening they go to the classes, but it's not everyone has that motivation to handle both. Some students, when they finish, for example, they would like to continue with the same routine like what they had in the past when they finish high school. So they want to go to a university where they get the scholarship, they go all the university, and then at the end of the day, that's the day. They want to have a student life. Some of them don't want that dual life of work and student life. So my question is the intention of the university to have a more full-time programs? And also, we have a shortage of teachers. Usually a lot of the teachers that work at the university also work at other institutions during the day. That's an issue. So my question is, if the intention is to go to full-time, does this mean that we are going to be hiring, for example, foreign educators to come here? What is their plan? I'm not saying that's a thing, but what is their plan in order to make this possible? Yes. Good. And then one thing, it was said by MP Jacobs that I very much agree with it. There's a significant number of our students that are not academic. They are not academic. And these are the ones that usually are left behind or sometimes find themselves in legal issues or it also, they contribute, they fall in the low income brackets. What is there in this legislation? Because maybe it's there. I haven't read it completely, but maybe it's there. What is there in this legislation for them? That is something very important that I also would like an answer to. For the rest, that's it, Madam Chair Lady. I will rest for now.
Thank you, MP Brook. I now give the floor to MP Otley. MP Otley, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good day to the Honorable Minister and his colleagues, the person sitting in the tribune, my honorable colleagues, the viewing and listening public. I won't be too long today. As many of my colleagues stated, it's a good step. But with a good step, what is most important is a correct step. And I believe as Parliament, that is our job right now, to correct any loose ends. So what I realize is that oftentimes nothing is done. And when something is finally done, we find everything that is wrong with it. And I must say that with this law, I am in favor of it. But to gain my vote would require just a few clarifications on my end. I can only speak for me. I noticed that USM was not mentioned specifically in the law. And also, why is this? I would also like to know, will the law increase or decrease the yearly subsidy to USM? Also, if it's increased, is this taken up in the 2025 budget? If not, is it expected for USM to foot the bill? If USM is to foot the bill, is USM in agreement with such? I think it's mainly important to get more feedback from our stakeholders, or especially the main stakeholder, be it USM. I saw some questions and some feedbacks. I don't know if those were addressed, and that is what I need in order for me to move forward through you, Madam Chair, to know if that the main stakeholders' concerns were addressed, and are they specifically in approval with what is about to happen. Because the last thing we need, as I stated, this is a good step, but it needs to be a correct step, because we do not want 2, 3, 4 years from now USM to capsize, or for this program to be put to a halt for financial issues and constraints. So let us use this moment here in Parliament to gather whatever information is needed and hopefully tweak anything that needs to be tweaked. Like I said, I'll keep it short through you, Madam Chair. That's it until the next round.
Thank you, MP Otley. And I will adjourn for a few minutes before we continue, as I will ask the Vice Chair to take the chair and briefly join the discussion regarding this law. So I'll adjourn for 3 minutes. Meeting adjourned.
Good afternoon and welcome back to this public meeting. After a brief adjournment to exchange chairs, I will now pass the floor immediately to MP Sarah Wescott Williams. MP Wescott Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair Lady, and a good afternoon to all my colleagues, to the Minister and his support staff, to those persons in the Tribune, and all following this important discussion on the draft law on higher education. Madam Chair Lady, let me join my colleagues in expressing words of thanks to the government and the Ministry of Education in particular for bringing this law thus far. Indeed, it has been with Parliament for a while, but there's a history on this draft law even before it was finally brought to Parliament. And that is why I believe it is so important that we thank the players, stakeholders, and all who have assisted in bringing it here thus far. I know that in the past, we had actually received a draft law on higher education. We had paid an advisor, a legal advisor, to draft and make all the necessary preparations. And again, evolution of the draft led to what we have before us today. So for that, my thanks as well. Madam Chair Lady, I could repeat many of the questions and the comments of my colleagues, but let me suffice to one, as I mentioned before, say thanks to all those involved and the ministry in particular for the efforts thus far. I agree that at some point, while due diligence is always in place or should be in place, at some point we need to take the step of deciding that, especially on a law of this nature, we're going to get a law on higher education in place. And yes, it might require tweaking, monitoring, evaluating, etc. But at some point, we gotta say, this is the law we are ready to go with. And stating that, I repeat a question asked by a colleague in terms of the minister before us now, whether the minister and his support staff, the ministry, have taken note of the answers as provided to the members of Parliament when we had the discussion in the Central Committee on this draft law. And I ask this again specifically because many were the questions like there are today on the University of St. Martin in the whole context of this law. The University of St. Martin has expressed several concerns, even recommendations, to the Parliament, and as indicated in the introduction to this meeting, the comments by the University of St. Martin were shared with the ministry. And so I asked, like some of my colleagues have done, whether attention was paid to the comments by the University of St. Martin, one, and if so, how are they reflected, if they are, in this draft law? And then I have a very basic suggestion to the minister and the ministry based on where we are in this discussion. And we have started a public meeting on this draft law, and my suggestion through you, Madam Chair Lady, to the minister would be, if before the minister returns to Parliament to answer the questions of Parliament, because after this we have another round to go, if the minister could just sit with the university on the draft that is before Parliament now, take the recommendations, comments, concerns of the University of St. Martin into consideration, and in as far as possible, see where an amendment could incorporate the things that the university is indicating, unless, of course, it is not possible, but then at least that answer be given to the University of St. Martin and the Parliament of St. Martin. Because I remember asking when we dealt with this matter in the Central Committee, when and how the university was consulted, and it was answered not on the final draft that is in Parliament. So I'm asking if that can still be done, and maybe not everything that a university has commented on and would like to see is possible in this draft, but then at least let us have the answer as to why not. So that would be my suggestion to the University of St. Martin. Of course, my feelings and that of the faction of the Democratic Party on the University of St. Martin are well known. And I'm sorry, it is not for nothing that we keep highlighting the coming into being of the University of St. Martin. It says something not only about education and the way we value education on St. Martin, it says something about St. Martin itself. And with that I mean that the University of St. Martin, first of all, there are a couple of things we need to take into consideration when we speak of the University of St. Martin. One, at the beginning of the University of St. Martin, that institution was called a university, when we were nowhere close to offering anything that a university as such would offer. But that name was given to it and maintained throughout, up until the point where we are today, and growth is still envisioned and possible for the University of St. Martin. Secondly, the University of St. Martin, and the part of that name, St. Martin, is spelled S-T-M-A-R-T-I-N, and it is spelled like that for a reason. It represents St. Martin, the people of St. Martin, the aspirations of the people of St. Martin where education is concerned. So I say all of this to say that a University of St. Martin, in this case, the University of St. Martin, means something more than just an institution of higher education for this country. It represents the aspirations of St. Martin, where education and the educating of our people are concerned. So I say this to amplify the point of, let us look if there's anything at this moment in this law without delaying the process of coming to the law on higher education. Is there anything that we can do to make sure that the aspirations of the University of St. Martin are taken along in the process of this law? We have it in front of us now. It is going through the channels of the Parliament, and hopefully within the not too distant future, we will come to the establishment of a law on higher education. And if the possibility is there for the government to make amendments in order to incorporate some of the issues that the University of St. Martin has highlighted to Parliament, then I think the opportunity is now to do so. Of course, members of Parliament, we can come with amendments ourselves, we can come with motions or whatever have you, but it is known that that cannot happen, or nothing will happen unless we do this in consultation with the government. Having seen all of the work that the government has put into this draft, I'm saying in order to close this chapter in the way that we would like to close it, the whole handling of the law on higher education, let's just make that extra step. I look forward to the responses to the questions by government. And I think, yes, finally, there is some light at the end of the tunnel where the law on higher education is concerned. So, Madam Chair Lady, I thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, MP Wescott Williams. I will now adjourn for 2 minutes to caucus with the, I see no one else on the speaker's list, so I will adjourn for 2 minutes to discuss with the Minister on how much time he would require to return with the answers to the questions asked by the members of Parliament. Meeting adjourned for 2 minutes. Good afternoon and welcome back to this public meeting number 21 concerning the National Ordinance for Higher Education. After discussing with the minister has requested a week to return with the answers to the questions from members of parliament. However, he has informed me that he has one closing statement to make regarding several of the questions pertaining to the University of St. Martin. So I will allow the minister to make that statement before adjourning. Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have received feedback from USM on the draft ordinance. We have also the follow-up answers or concerns regarding to their questions. We can submit the document to Parliament by tomorrow, and therefore the additional time we can caucus as well with USM in order for us to proceed further.
Okay, thank you, Minister. So just to confirm, the answers then from the ministry to USM's concerns, you'll submit to Parliament by tomorrow, and then I guess going from MP Wescott's suggestion, meeting with USM then to see how else you can move forward with this law, and then you'll return to Parliament to answer all the questions from the MPs, including those related to USM. Okay, so at this point, members of Parliament, I will thank everyone for their participation so far, and I will adjourn the meeting until further notice, and we await the document from the minister to be submitted by tomorrow. Meeting adjourned.